Welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating theological thought experiment. It comes from the writings of Said Nursi, specifically a text called The 28th Word. We're going to unpack its internal logic to see exactly how it resolves the seemingly impossible contradiction about the afterlife, human perception, and how we actually share experiences. It's a real mind bender, so let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this by looking at what we'll call the paradox of paradise.
So, the text kicks things off with a pretty famous religious axiom: everyone will be together with those he loves. Simple enough, right? But then the author throws a hypothetical curveball at us. Imagine a simple nomad, a guy living a totally basic, unadorned life. Now, let's say he gets to converse with a prophet for just one single minute. According to the text, in those brief 60 seconds, this nomad could develop a profound, genuine love for him. And because of that role we just mentioned, that you're always with those you love, that love basically guarantees the nomad will be physically alongside the prophet in paradise.
But hold on, because this raises a massive logistical and honestly spiritual question. This is the whole central paradox of our explainer today. If this simple nomad and the prophet are sharing the exact space and eternity, how on earth do we reconcile their vastly different spiritual capacities? Like, how does a single space accommodate literally the absolute highest pinnacle of spiritual development right alongside the most basic?
To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this gap, the text uses a very specific word to describe what the prophet receives in this state. That word is effulgence. Basically, this means absolute radiance, brilliance, or just limitless spiritual illumination. So we've got a situation here where one individual is receiving this boundless, limitless illumination, and the other, well, is a simple nomad. If they're standing shoulder to shoulder, how can their completely different levels of experience possibly unite in one shared environment? It just doesn't seem to make sense.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next core concept, centered around a magnificent banquet.
To explain how this actually works, the author paints this incredibly rich sensory parable. I want you to picture the ultimate feast. We're talking a meal prepared by a great, magnificent personage. Think literally the most exclusive, mind-blowing Michelin star experience you can imagine, but set right in the middle of a splendid garden. The author describes an environment that is engineered for total, absolute sensory perfection. We're talking delicious foods meant strictly to blow away your sense of taste, incredibly fine, beautiful objects placed there purely to please your sense of sight, and conceptual wonders designed just to amuse your imagination. It's the whole shebang, absolute gratification for literally every outer and inner sense.
Okay, now imagine two friends walk into this overwhelming garden together. They stroll right up to the banquet and they sit down together at the exact same table, in the exact same pavilion. Let's be crystal clear on the physical reality of what's happening here. These two individuals are occupying the exact same space. They're sitting shoulder to shoulder, sharing the exact same meal.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it highlights human capacities in entirely different realities. Consider the stark contrast between the internal capacities of these two friends sitting right next to each other. The first friend, his senses are highly restricted. I mean, he literally has no sense of smell whatsoever. So those incredible, mouth-watering aromas of the feast, all those delicate culinary masterworks, completely lost on him. On top of that, he just lacks the mental or emotional framework to really comprehend the wondrous art surrounding him. Because of these internal limitations, he only manages to experience like a millionth of the pleasure that's actually available in that room. But sitting right next to him is his highly developed friend. This guy's outer and inner senses are perfectly refined. He's got a highly evolved mind, heart, and emotional spectrum. He perceives every single subtlety, every tiny stroke of beauty, and fully experiences literally all the marvels of that exact same exhibition. Same room, totally different experience. The text makes a really fascinating and honestly kind of sobering observation right here. It points out that this massive perceptual gap isn't just some fantasy about the afterlife. Actually, even right now, in what the author describes as our confused, sorrowful, and narrow world, the greatest and the least are often sitting right next to each other. Yet the difference in their subjective experience of reality is as vast as the distance from the dirt on the ground all the way up to the Pleiades star cluster light years away in the night sky. Isn't that wild? Let's move to and see how this builds into what the text calls the architecture of eternity. Because according to the specific text we're analyzing, paradise isn't just some flat open field, it actually possesses verticality. The text clearly states there are exactly 8 levels of paradise, situated physically one above the other. But that brings us back to our paradox, right? How does a tiered structure actually work if everyone is supposed to be interacting and hanging out together? To help us visualize this, the author gives us a really brilliant spatial metaphor. Let's just walk through the steps together to mentally construct this 3D architectural model. Step 1. I want you to visualize a massive, towering, conical mountain. Got it? Okay. Step 2. Imagine walled circles or terraces wrapping all the way around this mountain. They're nested one within the other, ascending from the wide foot of the mountain all the way up to the narrow summit. And finally, step 3. Picture how these circular terraces look over one another. Because of that conical shape, the people on the lower circles aren't blocked by the circles above them. They are layered, they're distinct, yet, and this is the key, they don't prevent each other from seeing the exact same sun.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is that just as those terraced circles on the mountain all share the same sun without casting shadows on each other, all 8 levels of paradise share one ultimate unifying canopy. The text refers to this shared canopy as the sublime throne. Basically, it's an architectural framework that allows for distinct, highly elevated layers while still maintaining one single unified environment.
And this brings us perfectly back to the resolution of our opening paradox. The text concludes that in the realm of eternity, friend will indeed be together with friend. That simple nomad and the prophet, they can absolutely be entirely together. However, each person receives their share from the table of the most merciful, strictly in accordance with their own internal capacity and abilities. The text's ultimate logic just puts it beautifully. Even if the paradises in which they are found are different, it will not be an obstacle to their being together. They literally share the same physical proximity, the same sun, the same roof, but it's their inner development that dictates the sheer scale of the marvels they actually perceive.
Which brings us to the end of our analysis today, but it leaves us with a really provocative final thought. While this text uses the grand architecture of eternity to resolve a complex theological paradox, it ultimately holds a mirror right up to our present lives. If two people can sit at the same table in this very world and experience completely different realities based entirely on their inner development and sensitivities, well, how does your own internal capacity shape the reality you experience in this world today? Seriously, think about that the next time you share an experience with someone. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.